My daughter-in-law didn't know. I owned 78% of the company her husband runs as CEO. She only saw a 71-year-old man in a worn work jacket, driving a 20-year-old pickup. One Saturday evening, I went to a charity gala at a museum and the greeter sent me around to the back door with the cleaning crew. I went. I wanted to see how her family treats a poor man. Until she slid a cream envelope across the table, $50,000 and 3 sheets of paper. 96 days later, in front of 2,000 people. This is bitter autumn, and I'm grateful you chose to stay. Tell me in the comments which country and city you're listening from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. A quick note, parts of it are fictional, shaped for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to existing names or places is purely coincidental, but the message I'm leaving with you is useful. 2 men in dinner jackets were walking toward me across a ballroom, and my daughter-in-law had just said my name into a microphone in front of 2,000 people. It was day 96. Thursday, the 18th of July, 2024, in Emberley Dome Hall with the house lights down for the program. I was standing at this end of a long table. 12 glasses of champagne had been poured and set out on it, and not one of them had been touched. The little card said the table was reserved. The people it was reserved for never came. Somebody had done a lot of careful work that night for nothing. I had on a black suit. I bought it in 2005, and that evening was the second time in 19 years I put it on. I am not going to tell you yet what the first time was for. In the inside pocket, I had 3 sheets of paper folded in 4 soft, along the creases from being handled too much. Up on the stage, my daughter-in-law was still talking very slowly and very clearly, the way she always talked. The hall was laughing. I could hear my own name inside the laugh. The taller of the 2 men reached me first. He was polite about it. He put one hand out, not touching me, just showing me where the door was. "Sir, I need you to come with me quietly." "I will," I said. "I just need 4 more minutes." 96 days before that, on day 0, Saturday the 13th of April, 2024, at 7:20 in the evening, I parked my truck 3 blocks from a museum and walked the rest of the way. The truck is a 2004 Chevy Silverado. There is a patch of gray primer on the driver door where the paint came off, and I never had it sprayed. I park it far away from valet stands, not because I am ashamed of it, but because young men in vests do not know how to work the door handle. I was 20 minutes late. I had been somewhere before that, finishing something I had to finish, and I am not going to name the place yet. It matters later. That night, it only made me late. The Loomis Museum of Fine Art had string lights strung up in the trees along the front walk. Black cars came up the gravel one after another and let people out under the lamps. It was a private benefit, a fashion thing for charity, and the invitation had my son's company name on it in silver letters. I had my gray work jacket on, zipped to the middle. The elbows are shiny. One pocket came unstitched years ago, and I never sewed it. I had a plastic grocery bag in my left hand with a folder in it, because I have never once carried a briefcase and my flip phone in the jacket pocket. The greeter at the front steps was a young man with a clipboard. He looked at my jacket. He looked at it for about a second and a half. I have thought about that second and a half a good many times since. "Deliveries and cleaning crew, the door is around the back," he said. "All right," I said. I did not argue with him. I did not give him my name, and my name was printed on the program he was holding. I walked down off the steps around the east side of the building past the loading pad, and I went in through the service door. Floor wax and cold air. I had known that smell most of my life. The service corridor came out behind the east wing into the sculpture hall, between a white marble figure and a wall of small paintings. That is where I came in from. and my daughter-in-law was standing 4 steps away from the corridor door. Vanessa is president of the Kestrel Foundation, and she has been with the company 5 years. She was turning the platinum ring on her index finger around and around the way she does. She had heard the greeter. She had to have heard him. She was close enough to hear the man breathe. She did not correct it. She turned to the woman standing beside her, and she said it in that slow, clear voice of hers, not loud, not hidden. "The night crew is early tonight. Somebody should say something." I put my right hand in my pocket and closed it around a brass key until my knuckles cracked. There is a key ring in that pocket. On it, there is a cracked plastic identification badge from a cleaning company, and I carry it every day, and I am not going to explain it yet. It was not my key. The woman who carried it used that door 31 years and was never ashamed. Then my son found me. Arthur is Chief Executive Officer of Kestrel Biosciences Group. He has been there 16 years. He came across that hall and hugged me hard, and he held on longer than a man usually does at a party. "Dad, was the drive all right?" "It was fine," I said. Somebody told a story about a golf trip, and everybody laughed, and Arthur laughed half a second after everybody else, which he has done since he was a boy. Then he turned back to me. 40 seconds. I counted it later standing in my kitchen. "Dad, was the drive all right?" I said it was fine again. He picked up a pitcher and poured me a glass of water, and the surface of the water shook, and he stopped and moved the pitcher to his left hand and finished pouring with that one. He did not look up. I saw him switch hands. My son had run a company 3.5 years and could not remember which hand he used. Grady Marchetti came by and clapped my shoulder. He is Vanessa's father, a commercial real estate broker, retired now 31 years in the trade. "Good to see you, Chief. You still driving that truck?" "I am Mr. Marchetti," I said. Poppy ran past my legs, then 3 years old, holding a plastic deer with one broken leg. She said "Pop," and she was gone into the crowd before I could get my hand out. Late in the evening, I was standing by the marble figure with my grocery bag, and the hall was thinning out. Vanessa came away from the wall of paintings and walked toward me. She was not looking at anyone who served her, and she was not turning the ring anymore. She was holding a cream envelope with a plum-colored wax seal, and she was walking straight at me. She did not hand it to me right away. First, she sat me down at a table with her parents, and her father asked me what I did for a living. It was Saturday, the 13th of April, 2024, 20 minutes before 10 at night, and the sculpture hall was down to its last 40 people. The table was round and set for 8, close to a bronze horse about the size of a real one. Vanessa put me between her mother and an empty chair, and she took the seat straight across from me. She has been president of the Kestrel Foundation for 5 years, and she arranges everything the same careful way, including people. I set my grocery bag on the floor by the chair leg where nobody would step on it. Delphine Marchetti was on my right. She is Vanessa's mother and Grady's wife, and she has never had a profession. She wore an emerald necklace and kept one finger hooked under it while she talked the way a person holds a seatbelt. Grady Marchetti sat down last and started in on golf before the water was poured. 31 years selling commercial real estate, retired now, and he still talks about the back nine like it is work. He told me a course out past Bell Harbor had fast greens. Then he leaned back and he looked at the elbows of my jacket, and he asked me his question. "So what is it you do exactly for a living, I mean?" he said. He said it the way a man asks a stranger at a bus stop. Not cruel. He had already decided about me, and he was only filling in the blank. My son was 2 seats down. 16 years at the company, chief executive officer of it, since September of 2020, and a full plate in front of him he had not touched. Arthur was looking at the tablecloth. He did not answer for me, and I did not want him to. "I work," I said. "I have worked since I was 15. My mother cleaned offices at night for 31 years, and she was never ashamed of it. And I am not going to start tonight." I did not name the building where she worked. I did not name her. Those two things were mine, and I was not going to set them down on a table for other people to pick up. Then the table went quiet. It was not the polite kind of quiet. 8 people, and for about 4 seconds, not one fork moved. Grady looked into his glass like there was something in it. I said something after that about the caterer, a name I had read off a card by the door. I said it wrong, and I gave her somewhere to go. "It is pronounced Duval, not Duval," Delphine said. "Thank you," I said. I did not say it again either way. Vanessa changed the subject to the lighting in the East Wing. She speaks very slowly and very clearly, and she never once looked at the young man who came for the plates. Arthur said almost nothing all evening. By the end of that night he had said 9 words to me, and I could still tell you every one of them. It broke up near 11. I was on the museum steps with the cold coming up off the river when Vanessa came out behind me. She held the cream envelope out with both hands, the way people hand over something official. The plum-colored wax seal was pressed flat and unbroken, and the envelope was heavy for its size. "This is the best thing for everyone, Walter. Read it when you get home," she said. I thanked her. I took it with both hands, the same way she gave it, because a man can take a thing with dignity even when he does not know yet what it is. Through the glass doors, Arthur stood with his coat over his arm. "Dad, are you leaving?" he said. I said I was. I walked 3 blocks to the truck. I did not open the envelope in the lot. I set it on the passenger seat and drove across the river to Corliss Street, and I parked where I always park, in front of the house with the mailbox that leans a little to the left. The primer patch on the driver door was cold under my hand when I shut it. I turned on the dome light. There were 3 pages and a check. $50,000 made out to Walter Rennick, signed and dated that day. I read all 3 pages twice. Then I read 3 lines out loud to nobody in an empty truck. "Mr. Rennick shall not attend family gatherings, holidays, birthdays, or any event at which the family is present. Mr. Rennick shall not contact Arthur Rennick directly or through any other person without the written consent of Vanessa Marchetti Rennick. Mr. Rennick shall not approach, visit, or ask to see the minor child." Her side was signed. At the bottom, there was a line with my name typed under it, and the line was empty. I did not tear anything. I did not sign anything. I folded the 3 pages in 4 and put them in the pocket of that jacket, the one that has never been stitched back, and I squeezed the brass master key on my keyring until the teeth of it printed my palm. It was 11:50 at night. I sat there with the dome light on and looked at the dark windows of that house for a long minute. Then I took out my flip phone. I dialed a number I had not dialed in 12 years from memory, and it rang twice. "Mr. Rennick, it has been 12 years, he said. He said my name like a man who had been waiting 12 years for that phone to ring, and then he asked me one question. The question he asked me was whether I still owned what I owned, and I told him I did. And then neither of us said anything for a while. Day 1 was the next morning, Sunday, the 14th of April, 2024, and at 7 o'clock I was pushing a mower across my mother's grass. The house at 41 Corliss Street is 1 story, brick, 4 rooms. My mother died in 2005, and I have kept it the 19 years since. I mow it every Sunday morning early before the street wakes up. The gutter along the front is new. I hung it myself on Saturday morning alone on a ladder, and it took longer than I planned. That is why I was 20 minutes late to the museum. I have thought about those 20 minutes more than a man should. On the kitchen counter, there was a stack of mail. Not junk. Real envelopes that had been coming to that address for weeks, and I had not gone through one of them. I filled my mug at the sink, walked past the stack, and let it sit. The mug is white ceramic and cracked at the handle. You will not understand any of this without my mother. Opal Rennick was born in 1921. She cleaned office buildings at night for 31 years, the 18th floor of the Bellamy Building, and she raised me alone in those 4 rooms. Her keyring is my keyring, and her plastic identification badge from the cleaning company is still on. It cracked straight across her photograph. Here is the part I could never explain. My company was already doing well, and she kept riding the bus to work at night for 5 more years anyway. I asked her to stop. She said no, and she never told me why. There is a framed pay stub of hers on that kitchen wall. I did not need to look at the number. At 11 in the morning, I drove downtown and rode up to the 22nd floor of Kestrel Tower. Kestrel Biosciences Group. I founded it. I worked 43 years in pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, and I am chairman emeritus now, which means I keep a chair in the boardroom and no vote in it. Miles Quinlan met me at the elevator. Miles is general counsel of the company. He has been there 34 years, and he has been my lawyer for all 34. He reads everything twice, and he writes only in pencil. His office is a corner office with a pencil sharpener bolted to the window frame and 2 chairs that do not match. He closed the door. "Do you still own what you own?" he said. "I do," I said. "I just cannot touch it. I own 78% of Kestrel Biosciences Group." That morning, the company was valued at $9,400,000,000. Almost nobody alive knew the first number. 78% of $9,400,000,000, Miles said, and you cannot vote 1 share of it. I was right, and it was my own doing. In 2012, I put every share I held into the Rennick Voting Trust. A voting trust is a legal arrangement where you keep the value of your shares, but hand the voting of them to somebody else. In the Rennick Voting Trust, that somebody is an independent trustee, a professional, a stranger by design. I cannot vote. I cannot remove an officer. I cannot walk into a company meeting and change 1 line of anything. There is 1 door in it. It is called Clause 9. Clause 9 says the trustee must return full voting power to me upon a written finding by a federal court that Kestrel assets are subject to fraud. Nothing less opens it. A worry does not open it. A father being certain does not open it. I built that trust like a locked box, then I put the key inside it, then I sealed it. That is the whole picture, and I will not use it again. The rest of the city believes something else. In 2012, a 3rd phase trial failed, and I had a cardiac event at 59, and I stepped away. The story that settled over Harrogate was that I sold down to a small honorary stake and lost the rest. The board believes it. My own son believes it. I let it stand on purpose because after my mother died, I swore that no Rennick would ever be loved for money or looked down on for the lack of it. Then Miles reminded me of something I had almost forgotten I asked for. In 2019, he drafted the prenuptial agreement, and Vanessa signed it. It limits her on divorce to a fixed sum, and it excludes every share of Kestrel and every patent forever. "You asked me for that," he said. "You read it twice." "I did that to protect my son," I said. Then I laid the 3 pages from the night before on his desk next to the cream envelope with the plum wax seal and the check for $50,000. 3 restrictions. No family gatherings, holidays, or birthdays. No contact with Arthur directly or through anyone else without Vanessa's written consent. No approaching the minor child. Her side signed. My line empty. Miles read all 3 pages. Then he read them again. I can have this agreement voided by Tuesday, he said. It is unenforceable in 3 places. Do not tear it up, Miles, I said. Change it. Change it how? Send it back the way lawyers send things back, I said. Let her sign the version your office returns. She will not read it, he said. No, I said. She will not. Miles picked up a pencil, and he did not put it down for 2 hours. 9 days later, he handed me 11 pages where there had been 3, and he told me to read Clause 4B twice. That was day 9, Monday, the 22nd of April, 2024, in Miles Quinlan's office at 9:30 in the morning. Miles Quinlan had been general counsel of Kestrel Biosciences Group for 34 years. He wrote everything in pencil, and he read everything twice, and he never called me anything but Mr. Rennick. I sat down with my plastic grocery bag on the floor beside my shoes. The 11 pages were warm from the copier. On the corner of his desk sat the cream envelope with the plum wax seal and the check for $50,000 still uncashed. Miles had put both of them inside a new oxblood accordion folder closed with a rubber band, and he pushed the folder toward me before he pushed the pages. Read Clause 4B twice, he said. Then tell me if you would sign it. I read it twice. Then Miles read it aloud, because he wanted me to hear it in a voice and not in my own head. Either party may disclose medical and financial records of household members in any forum where the other party makes claims about family welfare. That was the whole sentence. It sat there on the page looking like housekeeping. Clause 7H, he said, and he read that one too. The $50,000 is described in writing as payment in exchange for staying away from Arthur Rennick and the minor child. Not a gift, not support. Payment in exchange in those words. Clause 11, he said. Disputes go to federal court. Not a family court downtown. Not a mediator in a rented room. Federal court named in plain print in an agreement about birthday parties. Miles, I said, I understood about half of that. Half is honest, he said. Most men tell me all of it. I would not sign anything I did not understand, I said. You are not the one signing, he said. He tapped the pages with the eraser end of the pencil. She will not read it. Her office will initial it and send it back inside a business day. That is what offices like hers do. I asked him how he could know that. He said he had watched offices like hers for 34 years and that people who run a calendar do not run a document. Then he counted for me. 11 pages, 3 restrictions carried over 8 additions, 4 of which he had written in words a court would enjoy reading later. He said the additions were all things Vanessa's own people had asked for in substance. He had simply written them down in full. I left the folder with him and drove the Silverado to Kestrel Tower for the afternoon. At 10 minutes past 1, Miles called my flip phone in the lobby. The signed copy had come back. Not by mail. By courier with a receipt 4 hours and change after his office sent it out. Every page initialed in the lower right corner, all 11 in small even letters. The initials were not Vanessa's. I went upstairs and looked at that courier receipt for a long time longer than a man should look at a piece of paper the size of a napkin. An assistant had initialed 11 pages that gave away her employer's medical and financial privacy, described $50,000 as payment for staying away from a man and a child, and moved every future fight into federal court. Nobody in that office had read it. That told me exactly how confident they were, and confidence like that is not built in 9 days. It is built over a year when nothing you do is ever questioned by anyone. At 2 o'clock, I took the corner chair in the 12th floor conference room. Glass on 2 sides. 11 people at the long table and the chair in the corner, reserved for a board observer, which was mine permanently, and which came with no vote and no voice. Arthur presented the quarterly review of his own division. He had been at the company 16 years and chief executive officer since September of 2020. He got through 5 slides. On slide 6, he stopped in the middle of the sentence about volume, and he did not find his way back. "I am sorry," he said. "Which quarter are we in?" "Second quarter, sir," a voice at the table said. "Second," Arthur said. "Thank you, second." He looked at me then. He looked at me twice in that hour, the way he used to look at me from the free throw line when he was 12. Josie Pell slid a small card across the table toward him. Josie Pell had been his executive assistant for 4 years. He read the one word on the card, and he continued, and the room wrote in their books as if nothing had happened at all. Here is the part people ask me about. 14 months of a chief executive who could not hold a sentence and nothing happened. That is not because nobody noticed. 2 department heads raised it in writing the previous autumn, and I have read both memos since. Both times the answer that came back was the same, that Mr. Rennick was under a documented treatment plan with a physician of record, and the matter was private. Vanessa was Chief Brand and Social Impact Officer, and she and Josie built the calendar so the meetings that could have gone badly were short. Sterling Rook was 74 and deaf in his right ear and sat at the far end. Nothing failed. Everything was routed. After the meeting, I stood in the corridor and watched Josie writing in a green-covered notebook, the way a person writes when the writing is the only thing keeping her upright. "Josie," I said, "has my son been sleeping?" She closed the notebook against her chest. "I am not allowed to answer questions about the calendar, Mr. Rennick," she said. She said she was not allowed to answer questions about the calendar. She did not say she had no answer. 14 days later, I was allowed into my son's house for one evening, and I want to be honest about that word, allowed. It was day 23, Monday the 6th of May, 2024. The invitation came from Vanessa's office by email with a start time of 7 and an end time of 10. I still have it. A man does not usually keep paperwork for dinner at his own son's table. The reason it was arranged and not forbidden is simple, and I will say it one time only. Weeks earlier, a cream envelope with a plum wax seal reached me. Inside was a check for $50,000 and 3 pages telling me where I could stand in my own family. Her side had signed. I never did, and the check is still in a folder on my kitchen table, so she could not forbid me. She could only schedule me. Ardenmore Crest sits above the water in Bell Harbor, behind a gate with a keypad. There were 11 guests that night, and the men wore dinner jackets. I wore the gray zip-front jacket with the shiny elbows and the one pocket that came unstitched years ago. I am 71, and I built a company for 43 years in that jacket. Nobody asked me to take it off, which was worse. My place card put me at the far end, past the last candle, next to a woman who did development work for a hospital and did not know who I was. Vanessa was the hostess, and she seated everyone herself. She came by once, said my name very slowly and very clearly, and turned the platinum ring on her index finger. Then she went back up the table where the light was. Arthur came around to me before the first course and put his hand on my shoulder. Somebody made it a joke about the traffic on the Bridge Road, and my son laughed half a second after everyone else, the way a man laughs when he is copying a sound. He had been Chief Executive Officer of Kestrel Biosciences Group since September of 2020, 16 years at the company. He looked like a photograph of himself that had been left in a window. Partway through the first course, the woman beside him held out her glass, and he took the water pitcher. The surface of the water moved. His right hand was shaking small and steady like a motor running under a table. He set the pitcher down before he finished pouring, and he put both hands in his lap and kept them there. He tried to tell a story a minute later. He said there was a supplier in Bell Harbor years ago who used to drive the crates himself, and then he stopped. There was a supplier in Bell Harbor and he, Arthur said. Hold on, I will finish it later. Nobody at that table asked him to finish it. That is the part I think about now. 11 adults heard a man lose the middle of his own sentence, and the conversation closed over the gap like water. Between courses. Delphine Marchetti stood up to look at the shelves by the pantry door. She is Vanessa's mother. She wore an emerald necklace, and she had already corrected 2 people on how to say their own last names. "What on earth is that in the frame?" she said. There was a small black frame on that shelf with a slip of paper behind the glass. Vanessa answered it for the whole table slowly and clearly so everyone could follow. "That is a pay stub," she said. $211.40. A whole week. Arthur keeps it for luck. It is the most expensive piece of art in this house. Several people laughed. Grady Marchetti laughed loudest. Hi is Vanessa's father, a retired commercial real estate broker with 31 years in the trade, and he had spent the first hour telling me about a course he plays in the spring. "For luck," he said. "That is wonderful. That is really wonderful, Chief." That slip of paper was my mother's. She cleaned office buildings at night for 31 years, the 18th floor of the Bellamy building, and $211.40 was 1 week of her life. I framed it and gave it to Arthur when he was young, so he would know what the money underneath him was made of. In my coat pocket I had her brass master key, and I squeezed it until the edge of it printed itself into my palm. I stood up. The chair legs scraped the floor and made a long, ugly sound, and the whole table stopped talking at once. 11 faces turned to the dark end of the room and waited. "Excuse me," I said. I did not say anything else. There was a version of that moment where I said everything, and I have run it in my head for a year and a half. What I did instead was sit back down in my own scrape marks. "I am sorry about the noise," I said. The plastic deer came down the stairs before the dessert. Poppy had it in one hand, the one with this broken back leg, and she was in pajamas with rabbits on them. She was 3 years old. She saw me at the far end, and her whole face opened. "Pop," she said. "Upstairs, sweetheart," Vanessa said. "Now." Someone carried her back up. 90 seconds start to finish. That was the whole of it, and Arthur never did finish his story about the supplier, not that night, not ever. At 10:30, I carried my plate into the kitchen, because that is what I do in a house, and I have done it since I was a boy at 41 Corliss Street. The staff were gone. On top of the kitchen bin, folded neatly in half, was a paper bag from a pharmacy with a clinic name printed across it. Ashby Behavioral Institute. I read it twice. I put my plate in the sink, and I left the bag exactly where it was, and I have been glad about that ever since. There was a paper bag folded in half on top of the kitchen bin with a name printed on it that I had never heard in my life. 3 days later, I drove to my mother's house at 6 in the morning and finally went through that stack of mail on her counter, and the 4th envelope down was from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. It was Thursday, the 9th of May, 2024, day 26. The kitchen was cold. I had not slept, and the reason I had not slept was a folded paper bag on top of somebody else's kitchen bin. 41 Corliss Street still has the same mailbox on the same post by the driveway. I mow that lawn on Sundays. I clear that gutter every fall, and I bring the mail inside and set it on the counter, and sometimes I let it sit for a month because most of it is nothing. That morning I sat on a kitchen chair in my work jacket, and went through all of it, envelope by envelope. The notice was automated. It was dated the 7th of March, 2024, and it said that an outside law firm had filed a change of correspondence address and a revocation of power of attorney on 4 company patents. 3 of those 4 were the foundational Meridian patents. Those 3 were filed between 2006 and 2010, and they are still in force today. I read that page 4 times standing up. The reason it came to that address is not clever, and it is not a mystery. My mother died in 2005, and I kept her house and I used her house as my mailing address for company paperwork, and I never changed it. 19 years of forms went to a small kitchen on Corliss Street because I never got around to it. The only warning anybody got in this entire business arrived at the front door of a house my daughter-in-law once told me to unload a house she called the chicken coop. Here is what that filing actually was in plain words. It was not a sale of anything. You change where the mail goes first, so the real owner never hears about what you file second. Revoking the power of attorney cut off the patent lawyers who had handled those 3 patents since the year they were written and pointed everything at somebody new. It was housekeeping. It was the kind of housekeeping a person does before company comes. I had an oxblood accordion folder closed with a rubber band that I had been carrying in my grocery bag since April. The check for $50,000 was already in it. I put the notice in behind the check, and I snapped the rubber band, and I drove to Millbrook. Day 31. I sat in a small office on the 19th floor of Kestrel Tower with Tessa Bright. Tessa is head of corporate intelligence at Kestrel. She had 19 years in corporate investigations. Before she ever sat in that chair, she reports through the audit committee and not through the chief executive officer, and she calls me Mr. Rennick. She speaks in short sentences, and she does not decorate them. Miles Quinlan, our general counsel, 34 years with the company, walked me down there himself with a pencil behind his ear. She asked me 4 questions. When did the notice arrive? Who else has a key to that mailbox? Did I sign anything in March? And then the last one. Who benefits if the address changes? She said. Whoever files next, I said. Then that is who we look for, she said. I will need the folder, and I want an alert on those 3 patents. Miles took his pencil out and explained the piece I had honestly half forgotten. Arthur holds a leftover personal right in 3 of the oldest patents, he said. It went into the succession plan in 2012. It is called a reversionary interest. It means this. Even after the company owns the patents outright, my son personally keeps a small residual claim written into that plan, a leftover string tied to his name as co-inventor. It is not money, and it is not a share of the company. It is a right, and rights have to be signed away by the person who holds them. Miles read the paragraph twice the way he reads everything, and then he set it down and said he would take the physical program to Sterling Rook and the audit committee. That was the part I was proud of and should not have been. The company had run an executive physical program for years and had let it lapse. Miles had it reinstated through the committee for every officer with no name attached to the request. Day 38, Tuesday the 21st of May, Arthur walked himself down to the company clinic on the 4th floor with a clipboard. Josie Pell, his executive assistant 4 years at Kestrel, had put the authorization page in his signature folder that morning, between a lease and a travel form. She wrote it in her green-covered notebook. Arthur signed it without reading it the way he signed 40 other things that week. That page named an independent laboratory, and it named Walter Rennick as the recipient of the results. He gave blood and hair in 1 visit, and he was back upstairs in half an hour. He asked me about it twice. Dad, why do you keep asking me about a physical? He said. Because you turn 40 next year and you look tired, I said. Then I went to Bellamy Row, and hired the best forensic toxicologist in the region. Dr. Leland Frost, 28 years in practice, a wall of diplomas, a voice so kind, it made you sit up straighter. I picked him for one reason. His name was already in my son's medical file because he had been a standing member of the clinical review panel at the Ashby Behavioral Institute since 2022. And that was the first time in my life I said that name out loud. I thought that was convenient. "Give me 3 weeks, Mr. Rennick, sir," he said. "I will be thorough. I am always thorough." He told me he would be thorough. He said it twice, and I remember thinking that was a strange thing to promise a man twice. While I waited 3 weeks for a thorough man to be thorough, my granddaughter turned 4, and I drove out to Bell Harbor with a wrapped box on the seat beside me. It was day 52, Tuesday the 4th of June, 2024. I had not missed a birthday yet. I wrapped the box myself at my kitchen table on Sable Row. The paper had trucks on it. The bow was bad off-center and flat on one side because I wrapped it myself and would not let a store do it. Inside was a wooden barn with a red roof and a sliding door. I got to the front gate of Ardenmore Crest at 2 in the afternoon. It is an iron gate with black bars set close together and an intercom on a stone post. Through the bars, I could see balloons tied to a white tent on the lawn, moving in the wind off the water. There was a green garbage can beside the gatehouse. I remember the can because I remember everything about that afternoon. The attendant came out. He was a young man in a pressed shirt with a clipboard, and he was polite the way people are polite when they already know how a thing is going to go. "Good afternoon, sir," he said. "Name, please." "Walter Rennick," I said. "I am Poppy's grandfather." He ran his finger down the page. Then he went inside the gatehouse, and I watched him pick up a phone, and I watched him listen a lot more than he talked. He came back out, and he could not hold his eyes on me. "Sir, I am sorry you are not on the list," he said. "Check the last page," I said. "Sometimes family goes on the last page." He checked all of it, and I knew he was checking to be kind, not because he thought he would find me. "Mrs. Rennick asks that the gift not come inside," he said. I stood there with the box in both arms. 50 pounds of nothing. "I understand," I said. "You are just doing your job." He took the box. He turned, lifted the lid of the green garbage can beside the gatehouse, and set my grandchild's birthday present down inside it, and he did not look at me while he did it. Those were his instructions. He was 25 years old maybe, and none of it was his. He was not a villain. I was a man with a clipboard doing what he was told, and I could see it cost him something. I should have left. I turned to go and I heard my name, except it was not my name, it was the short one only she uses. "Pop, Pop." She came across the grass in a yellow dress, running flat out the way 4-year-olds run all arms. She was the only person in this whole story who ever ran toward me. She got to the bars and pressed her face between two of them and held something up over her head so I could see it. It was the plastic deer. She has had it since she was 2. One of the back legs snapped off at some point, and she never let anybody throw it away. "Pop, Pop, the deer is broken," she said. "Can you fix it?" "I can fix anything, sweetheart," I said. She nodded like that settled it. That is what 4 is. You say a thing and it is true. I got my hand through the bars far enough to touch 2 of her fingers. Then a woman in a white shirt, whose name I never learned, picked her up and carried her back toward the balloons. Poppy waved the deer over that woman's shoulder the whole way. Vanessa's message reached me through a young man with a clipboard, and that was the whole of it. Here is the part I had to sit with. There was a cream envelope in my house with a plum wax seal on it and 3 pages inside, and a check for $50,000 I never cashed. Vanessa's side signed those pages. I never did. A paper I never signed cannot keep me off a public road. It can keep me off a private driveway. That is all she needed. I drove home to Sable Row, and I parked in front of my own house, and I sat in the truck for 11 minutes before I could go inside. A man does not think much in 11 minutes like that. He just waits for his chest to loosen up. At 9 that night, Tessa Bright came to my kitchen. Head of corporate intelligence at Kestrel, 19 years in corporate investigations, and she works through the audit committee, not through me. She set 2 laptops on my table under the one overhead light, and she set a printout beside them. I poured her coffee in my white mug, the one cracked at the handle because it was the only clean one I had. She talks in short sentences, and she does not use one extra word. The foundation paid 9 vendors, she said. Event work, branding, curatorial fees. Are they real? I asked. 9 vendors, all real, every payment under $750,000, she said. I know what that number is. 750,000 is the line where a second person has to sign. Under it, one signature is enough. Every payment landed under the line. The program budget is $90 million a year, she said. Nothing here rings a bell by itself. So it is legal, I said. Tessa turned the printout around so it faced me. 9 names, every one of them a company that had worked with us for years. Invoices spread out over months, none of them large, none of them late, none of them strange. It is tidy, she said. Nobody is that tidy by accident. And the money does not stop at the vendors. She said the money did not stop at the vendors, and then she opened the second laptop. What was on the second laptop took a forensic accountant 3 days to explain to me, and she explained it by talking about water. Day 55 was Friday the 7th of June, 2024. I drove down to Ambler Cay and parked the truck where the river smells like rope and diesel. Boone and Harlow Forensic Advisory has one room with 3 whiteboards and a projector and no window facing the street. Harriet Boone is a forensic accountant with 23 years in forensic accounting. She opened both laptops before she said hello. Tessa Bright stood near the door, 19 years in corporate investigations, still not one extra word out of her. I took the tin of butterscotch candies out of my jacket pocket and set it on the table beside the oxblood accordion folder with the rubber band around it. Nobody asked me why. I did not say. Mr. Rennick, before we start, you need one idea, Harriet said. Money is water. It runs downhill, and it leaves a mark on everything it touches. She wrote a figure on the whiteboard in blue marker and stepped back so I could see all of it. $31 million, she said. 14 months, 9 vendors, all real, every payment, under $750,000. 14 months, starting in April of 2023. Out of a program budget of $90 million a year. I sat there in a chair with a wobble in it and did the arithmetic I had done 1,000 times in my working life. 31 out of 90 spread across 14 months and 9 invoices lines is a rounding error to anybody reading a summary page. Then she drew 4 boxes across the board and connected them with arrows left to right downhill. The vendors invoiced the foundation for event work, branding, curatorial fees. The vendors got paid, and they kept their peace, and they were real companies who did real work for us for years. Then most of each payment moved on as a subcontract to Calderon Holdings Limited in the British Virgin Islands. From there it went to Sable Point Nominees in Nevis. From Nevis it went to Theravance Consulting in Cyprus. And out of Cyprus, it came back across the water to Grady and Delphine Marchetti in Bell Harbor, paid to them as advisory fees. Understand what those 3 companies are, Harriet said. They are paper, a name, a mailing address, and a local agent who signs whatever comes in. No employees, no offices you could visit. Each border the money crosses is one more government that will not answer a question quickly. That is the whole design. Distance buys time. Grady is a retired commercial real estate broker, 31 years in the trade. A man who talks golf at funerals and calls me chief. Delphine has never held a job in her life and corrects people on how they pronounce names. Advisory fees. I read the amounts twice. So the water goes downhill, I said. Where does it pool? That was the part she had built the 3 days toward. She turned the projector on and put photographs on the wall, and every one of them had a document number in the corner. A boat at Cabrillo Key, 94 feet long, $11 million held through a company nobody at Kestrel had ever heard of. A mountain property at Silver Pine Hollow, $8,500,000 closed in cash. A trip to the Argenta coast, the whole thing, the flights and the villa and the cars. And then a single invoice package for one evening at the Loomis Museum of Fine Art. Sculpture Hall, East Wing, $1,600,000. I knew that evening. I had stood outside it in this jacket. A young man at the front had looked me over and sent me around to the service entrance, and I had walked in past the carts and the trash room and the mop sink like it was nothing, because it was nothing, because I had grown up going indoors like that with my mother. I want to say the next part plainly, because it is the reason I am still telling this at all. Every glass of champagne I was too poorly dressed to stand near that night had been paid for out of the company my mother cleaned offices at night to help me build. Not out of Vanessa's money, not out of Grady's money, out of ours. Monday, day 58, the 10th of June. I drove out to Sterling Rook's screened porch with the folder on the seat beside me. Sterling has been chairman of the board and chair of the audit committee for 41 years on that board. He is 74 years old, and he is deaf in the right ear, so you sit on his left or you waste your breath. He has been my friend for 41 years. He is the only person alive who calls me Walt. Harriet drove out and joined us because she reports to the audit committee that Sterling chairs and never to me. He poured iced tea into jelly jars and did not pretend this was a social call. How long have you known? I asked Harriet. 13 months, she said. I reported it the week I found it. 22nd of May 2023. I turned to Sterling, and he did not look away from me. You told me to document and not intervene, Walt, he said. I have the note. You wanted to protect the marriage. Nothing failed. No control missed anything. The threshold worked, the vendors were checked, the flag went up on time, and it went to the right committee, and the committee brought it to a man in a work jacket, sitting in a chair he did not have to give up. A system did not let this happen. I did. I did, I said. I was protecting the wrong thing. Sterling let that sit. The porch screen buzzed. Harriet reached into her bag then, and her voice changed for the first time in 3 days. Mr. Rennick, she said, the money is the small part. She slid a clinic invoice across the table without saying the name out loud, and it was the 3rd time in a month that I had seen it. I carried that invoice in my jacket for 3 days, because on Thursday the toxicology was due, and I was certain the invoice and the toxicology were going to say the same thing. That Thursday was day 61, the 13th of June, 2024. I parked the Silverado outside Dr. Frost's office on Bellamy Row and went up at 4 in the afternoon. Dr. Leland Frost was a forensic toxicologist with 28 years in practice, and he had a wall of diplomas hung dead straight. He had the kindest voice I have ever heard come out of a man. He stood when I came in. He pulled the chair out for me himself. Mr. Rennick, sir, he said. Sit down. I have all of it here. The pages were in a stack squared at the corner of his desk. He did not hand them to me, and he did not summarize. He read them to me line by line because that was what I had asked him for. I had chosen him myself. I had told him to leave nothing out, and he left nothing out. He went through the blood panel first. He named each test, then the method, then the reference range, then the result. He did that for every line on the page. Then he set the page down and turned it over. "I ran the blood panel line by line, Mr. Rennick, sir," he said. "There is nothing there." Nothing meant nothing. No sedative. Nothing in the neurosuppressant family. No compound he could not account for, and nothing he could not account for at all. My son's blood was the blood of a healthy man of 38. I asked about the hair sample. He looked down at the file for a moment and answered without any change in his voice. "The hair was not suitable for segmental work in my laboratory," he said. "The retained portion is in storage if you ever want it." I said all right. I did not ask him what unsuitable meant. I did not ask who else had handled it, or where storage was, or what it would cost to send it somewhere else. I had a stack of clean pages in front of me, and a man with 28 years behind him telling me they were clean. Then he was kind to me, and the kindness was the part I could not stand. "Your son is 38 years old, and he is running a company you built," he said. 38 is tired. That is all this is. He said a man who builds something finds it very hard to watch his son grow into it. He said he saw it often. He said fatigue is fatigue, and that there is no test that comes back and tells a father he was right to be afraid. "I have seen a great many fathers in that chair," he said. "It is not a weakness to be wrong about this." I shook his hand and thanked him and went down to the truck. The invoice was still folded in my inside jacket pocket. I never took it out. Not once all night. I was home on Sable Row at 6 in the evening. I put the 11 pages on the kitchen table under the one overhead light. I laid a ballpoint pen down beside them. I filled the kettle and put it on. Then I sat down and did the thing I had spent 43 years in this business doing. I built the case against my own position. My son was tired. Tired is not a crime. My daughter-in-law spent a great deal of money on parties, and spending money on parties is not a crime either. She had made a joke once about a pay stub, and a joke is not a crime. The money at the foundation was real. Harriet Boone had shown me the water, 3 days of it, at Ambler Key, 23 years of forensic accounting in every page. But that was a company matter, and the committee had it. It was not the reason my son stopped in the middle of sentences and could not find his way back. And the best toxicologist in the region had just told me kindly, line by line, that there was nothing in Arthur's blood. That left one person in the story with no evidence at all. The kettle boiled, and I did not pour it. I read the 11 pages again. Page 4 was the one about Poppy, the part that said I would not approach her. I read that page 11 times. Somewhere in there I stopped reading it as a rule somebody wanted and started reading it as a rule somebody needed. I boiled the kettle twice more. The white mug sat by my elbow with the crack running down the handle, and it stayed empty the whole night. At 4 in the morning, the kitchen went cold, the way that house always went cold before sunrise. I got up and opened the bottom drawer in the hall and took out my mother's gray scarf, the hand-knit one with the dropped stitch near the end. I put it over my shoulders. I sat back down and picked up the pen. Then I sat there. A man of 71 years in his mother's scarf at his own kitchen table, deciding that he was the problem. The window went from black to gray to a thin, dirty white. At 6 in the morning, I called Vanessa on the flip phone. I had the pen in my hand when she answered. Vanessa, I owe you an apology, I said. You were right. I will sign it. She was gracious. She was gracious for about 20 seconds. Thank you, Walter. That means a great deal, she said. I have to go. We are boarding. Then the line went quiet. I want to be honest about this part of the story. I almost signed it. Before I tell you what I found in that basement under the loading dock, type, "I'm here," in the comments, so I know I'm not telling this to an empty room. Please note some details ahead are fictional and may not be entirely factual. If you'd rather not hear it, you can leave the video at this point. The reason I did not sign it on Saturday morning is that Tessa Bright called me at 7 and asked me one question about the man I had just believed. That was day 63, Saturday the 15th of June, 2024. I was still at the kitchen table on Sable Row, with my mother's gray scarf over my shoulders and the pen in my hand. The 11 pages sat in front of me still unsigned. The flip phone rang, and I thought it was Vanessa calling back. Tessa Bright has been in corporate investigations for 19 years, and she has run corporate intelligence at Kestrel Biosciences Group for a long stretch of that. She does not open with weather. She said my name once, and then she asked me who recommended Dr. Frost. Nobody, I said. His name was already in Arthur's file. The line went quiet for about 2 seconds. 2 seconds from Tessa Bright is a long silence. That is what I was afraid of, she said. Cyprus paid his clinic $640,000 in September, and he has been on their panel since 2022. She told me to come to the basement of Kestrel Tower. Not the 22nd floor. The basement. I put the pen down on the 11 pages, and I left them lying there, and I drove the Silverado into Millbrook with the primer patch on the driver door, catching the early sun. The records room is under the loading dock. Fluorescent light, 2 tubes out of 6 gray boxes on steel shelving to the ceiling. It smells like cardboard and cold concrete. Tessa had 4 boxes open on a folding table and a single sheet of paper turned toward me. She laid it out in 8 sentences. The clinic took a research grant in September of 2023. The payer was Theravance Consulting in Cyprus. The amount was $640,000. The money came from Calderon Holdings. Dr. Leland Frost has sat on the clinical review panel at the Ashby Behavioral Institute since 2022. The panel signs off on treatment records. Frost is a forensic toxicologist with 28 years in practice. There is no version of this where those facts sit in separate rooms. Then she gave me her guess, and she called it a guess because that is how she talks. Her guess was that Frost had never been put there for me at all. Her guess was that Frost had been placed on that panel years earlier so that a set of medical records would stay clean, so that a psychiatric file could not be challenged later by anybody who came looking. I want to be plain with you. Her guess turned out to be right. I stood in that basement under a dead fluorescent tube, and I understood what I had done to myself. I had gone looking for an expert. I had opened my son's file, and I had picked the name inside it, because it was right there, and it was easy, and the man had the kindest voice I had ever heard on a telephone. I did not fail because I was outmatched. I failed because I trusted a document written by the person trying to destroy my son. Tessa did not comfort me. She said she would keep the boxes, and she asked me not to call Frost again. Then she said one more thing before I went up the stairs. She said the assistant had been trying to talk to somebody for a year. That was Sunday day 64, the 16th of June in the evening, when Josie Pell came to my house. She had never been to my house. She has been Arthur's executive assistant for 4 years, and in all that time she had spoken to me about exactly one subject, which was calendars. She stood in the doorway on Sable Row in a rain jacket holding a notebook with a green cover and she would not come in until I said her name twice. The 11 pages were still on the kitchen table where I left them. The oxblood accordion folder with this rubber band around it sat next to them. I moved neither one. We both looked at the table and neither of us knew how to start. "Mr. Rennick, I am probably going to be fired for this, home," she said, "but I am more afraid of somebody saying it was my fault." Then she opened the notebook. 191 entries, 14 months, she said. I wrote all of them down because nobody believed me about the calendar. For 14 months, she had written down every single time Arthur was not himself. Dates, times to the minute. What he said. Not because she suspected anything. Because she was afraid that one day somebody would look at a missed meeting and decide the scheduling machine had made a mistake. She read me 3 of them. A Thursday in January, when he stopped in the middle of a sentence about the Meridian licensing review and never found his way back to it, and she sat there for 90 seconds waiting. A Friday in February, when he asked her to move a board call that had already happened. And a Tuesday in March, when he asked her the same question about a flight 5 times in 9 minutes, and she answered it 5 times, and she wrote down all 5. Then she said the thing she did not know she was saying. "He signs whatever is in the folder," she said. "He has for about a year." I asked her to say that again. She said it again the same flat way, like it was a detail about office supplies. She is the one who puts the pages in his signature folder. He signs what is in it. He does not read them anymore. I sat down. I did not tell her what she had just handed me. She looked at the clock on my stove and said she had to make a call about Poppy, that she had promised that it was almost bedtime out at Bell Harbor. She dialed on her own phone, said 4 polite words to somebody, and then she held the phone out to me across the 11 pages I still had not signed. "Pop, I still have the deer, when are you fixing it?" 11 words in the voice of a girl who had turned 4 years old 12 days earlier, and then the phone was gone. Josie put her hand flat on the green cover. She said there was one more name in that notebook, a name that appeared 31 times, and she asked me whether I had ever heard of it. I had heard of it twice already on a paper bag in a kitchen bin in May, and on an invoice a forensic accountant slid across a table in June. And on Monday morning, I took the retained hair to somebody who had never heard of any of us. That Monday was day 65. Monday, the 17th of June, 2024. The name Josie Pell had put her hand on the night before the one written 31 times in her green-covered notebook was the Ashby Behavioral Institute. Dr. Naomi Fry was an independent forensic toxicologist with 22 years in practice. Her laboratory sat at Whitcomb Flats, 2 blocks off the water, in a building with no sign on the door. Miles Quinlan retained her out of his own office, and not through the company, so no invoice of hers would ever cross a desk at Kestrel Tower. She did not shake my hand. She poured coffee with her gloves on, and kept them on while she drank it, and she called me Mr. Rennick from the first minute to the last. I set the sealed portion on her bench. It was the retained hair released out of Dr. Leland Frost's storage under Arthur's own written authorization from day 38. Back when my son still signed a thing because I asked him to. Next to it, I put the oxblood accordion folder, which had gotten so thick that the rubber band no longer went around it. Josie's notebook lay beside the folder, green cover up. Fry asked what I thought I wanted. I said blood work. She shook her head one time the way a person does when the answer is old news to her and brand new to you. "Blood tells you about today, hair tells you about a year you brought me a year," she said. Then she gave me the rest of it in 3 sentences, and it was the only stretch of that whole summer where I had to sit and listen to science. A compound leaves the blood in hours or in a few days, So a blood draw only proves what somebody took recently. Hair grows about a ½ inch every month and locks in whatever was moving through the body while that ½ inch was being made. Cut a length of it into monthly segments, run each segment separately, and what you have is not a test anymore. It is a calendar. She told me to come back Wednesday and to bring Miles. Those 2 days were the longest of the 96. I mowed the grass at 41 Corliss Street on Tuesday because my hands needed something to hold that was not a phone. Day 67 was Wednesday, the 19th of June. Fry had a light box on the wall of the back room, the kind that glows white and even, and she had laid her results across it in a single row. 14 strips. One for each month from May of 2023 through June of 2024. 14 bands, 3 compounds in every one of them, no gap, not a single week, she said. 3 compounds, a neurosuppressant and a sedative combination. The same 3 every month, the amounts steady enough that you could have set a watch by them. I stood there with my reading glasses pushed up on my forehead and counted the strips twice because I wanted one of them to be empty. Nobody forgets for 14 months, Mr. Rennick, she said. That is not a habit, that is a schedule. Miles laid the rest of it on the bench under the light box. He reads everything twice and he writes only in pencil, and he had gone through the Ashby Behavioral Institute file page by page. Dr. Corinne Ashby, psychiatrist, founder of the Institute, 26 years in practice, a consulting room with no windows, and a woman who calls the people she treats cases. She is Vanessa's psychiatrist. On paper, she is Arthur's treating physician, and she has never once met me. The file described 14 months of decline. Cognitive decline. Impaired financial judgment. Paranoid ideation. A line claiming he was a danger to himself. Every entry in Josie's notebook had a twin in that file. The missed meeting, the sentence. He could not finish the tremor, the signature folder. He stopped reading, except that Ashby's version had no cause in it and no chemistry in it, and it all began on the 19th of April 2023, under something the Institute called an executive wellness protocol. I asked Miles what all of it added up to. He put his pencil down first. It is called a conservatorship, he said. A judge signs it, and one adult takes over another adult's money and decisions. That is what all of this has been for. Not a divorce. Not a fight over a title. A state court order that would hand my son's bank accounts his signature, his shares, and his own consent to somebody else with a doctor's file standing behind it, saying he could not be trusted with any of it. An erasure signed and stamped and legal the day after. So I asked the thing I had been swallowing since May. Why not drive out to Bell Harbor, put the printout in front of Arthur, and let him read it himself? Miles gave me 3 reasons, and he used 6 sentences. 1, Arthur was on 3 compounds, and he told his wife everything inside a day, not because he was careless, but because that was the marriage he thought he had. 2, the file already recorded paranoid ideation. So the moment my son repeated his father's accusation out loud, that accusation went into her petition as a symptom. The moment he believes you, her file gets stronger, not weaker, Miles said. 3, she would move the timetable up. Everything we had was worth nothing if she filed before we were ready. I looked at the 14 strips one more time and asked Fry the only question a father asks. Can he come back? I said. Probably. Mostly. I am not going to promise you all of it, she said. I told them both something out loud in that room. Until that afternoon, I had been thinking about how to win. After that afternoon, I only wanted to stop it before it ever reached a judge. Fry peeled off one glove and asked me the question that followed me home. What happens if she files before you are ready? I told her I had 25 days. I was wrong about that by 20. 5 days later at 9 in the morning, my daughter-in-law filed the petition, and I found out from a court clerk who did not know who I was. That was day 72, Monday, the 24th of June, 2024, and I was standing at the counter inside the Harrogate County Courthouse in a gray zip front work jacket with shiny elbows. I had come in for a certified copy of something else. The young woman behind the glass typed the family name, turned her screen a little, and said there was a new matter opened that morning, if I wanted that one too. I paid $1.50 a page for it. The filing stamp was in the upper right corner, purple ink, slightly crooked, 9:04 in the morning. Petitioner Vanessa Marchetti Rennick. Proposed conservatee Arthur Rennick. She had asked the court for a temporary conservatorship first, which is the emergency version of it, and moves in weeks instead of months. Hearing set for day 103 in the same building in a room I had walked past for 40 years without looking in. The Ashby file came in as an attachment, and it was thicker than the petition it supported. Cognitive decline, impaired financial judgment, paranoid ideation, a line claiming he was a danger to himself. 26 years of practice signed at the bottom of every page, and every page describing a man who laughed half a second late and could not always find the end of his own sentence. Then on page 9, I read my granddaughter's name. Poppy Rennick, born the 4th of June, 2020. The petition argued that the welfare of a 4-year-old child required immediate relief because her father could no longer be trusted with a signature. That was the part I read twice standing on the courthouse steps with people going around me. My son was being erased, and his daughter was the reason given. I went down those steps and got in the truck and drove, and I want to be honest about the next hour. I did not have anywhere to go. I got onto Millbrook Avenue, and I kept going straight because turning required a decision, and at 2 in the afternoon I pulled into a hospital parking lot and stopped in a visitor space because I could not keep driving. I hit the steering wheel one time with the flat of my hand. Then I sat there and looked at the little cloud of dust my hand had knocked off the plastic, and I wiped it off with my sleeve, because that is who I am, and that is who my mother raised. My other hand was already in my jacket pocket, closed around a brass master key that had opened doors on the 18th floor of the Bellamy building for 31 years. I sat in a hospital parking lot with a dead woman's key in my fist for 11 minutes. Then I opened the flip phone and called Miles Quinlan. He read it before he said anything, twice the way he reads everything, and I could hear his pencil moving. "You have no standing, Mr. Rennick, not as a father and not as an owner," he said. I asked him to say the second part slower. He did. Arthur was a competent adult until a judge said otherwise, so a father was nobody in that courtroom. And my 78% sat inside the Rennick Voting Trust, my own vehicle built in 2012, voted by an independent trustee. I could not vote it. I could not fire one person. I could not walk into an operations meeting and stop a single line item. "Wait for a federal judge, that is the only key that opens that box," Miles said, and he named Clause 9 once and did not explain it because he had explained it to me already, and Miles never says a thing twice. "And if no judge ever signs anything," I said. Then on day 103, a woman in a good coat cries in a courtroom, and your son stops existing on paper, he said. That evening, I sat in Tessa Bright's office on the 15th floor with the blinds down. 19 years in corporate investigations, and she talks in short sentences with nothing decorative in them, which on that particular day was a mercy. She had recovered mail on the screen, and she turned the monitor toward me before she sat down. "The laptop is ours," she signed the device use policy. "In 2020, everything on it is lawful," she said. Then she said, "Read the 4th of April email before you read the timetable. Day 4. 68 days before that evening." 9 sentences sent from a company laptop in her own words. If I refused to sign the agreement in the cream envelope, she would have Dr. Corinne Ashby document me as a risk to the child and seek a court order barring contact. She wrote it plainly. She wrote it the way a person writes down a grocery list, and she had written it 11 weeks before she filed anything on my son. I read it 3 times. I had spent 2 months believing I was watching a thing take shape. It had been finished and typed before I ever started looking. Then Tessa scrolled to the timetable, and that was worse. 48 hours after the conference, Calderon signs and $180 million lands, and it does not come back, she said. 5 months of negotiation offshore through the licensing vehicle of a legitimate foreign group with lawyers who had done nothing wrong. The Meridian platform licensed in stages $1.4 billion, first tranche $180 million, and not refundable. Once a good faith licensee held those rights, no criminal case anywhere would drag them back. That was what the conservatorship was for. Not the company, not the money in the foundation. A signature on Arthur's patents, and a 48-hour window to use it. I counted it out on the drive home slowly, the way you count when the numbers keep coming out the same. I owned 78% of a company worth $9.4 billion, and for 25 days I was not allowed to do one single thing about it. On the 7th of those 25 days, Miles Quinlan called me and said 4 words. "Your mother had a lawyer." That was day 79, Monday the 1st of July, 2024, and I was standing in my kitchen on Sable Row with the flip phone against my ear. I did not sit down. I picked up my plastic grocery bag and drove into Millbrook. Miles has been general counsel of Kestrel Biosciences Group for 34 years. He reads everything twice and he writes only in pencil. Nobody admires that in a man until the day it saves him. He had gone through the trust file in April. The second time through, he told me he noticed one line he had skipped. "A cross-reference, Mr. Rennick," he said. 1989. An instrument that is not ours. He turned a photocopy around on the desk. There was a small pencil mark in the margin, and at the bottom of the page there was a name. Ellis Barrow, Attorney at Law. I knew that name the way you know a name you heard once at a kitchen table a long time ago. I asked Miles if the man was alive. He said the man was 91 years old and lived in a care residence in Fenwick, 11 minutes from my house. I had driven past that building 200 times. The day room smelled like coffee and floor wax. There was a television going in the corner with a cooking show on it, and nobody was watching. Ellis Barrow sat by the window in a brown cardigan, and when I gave him my name, he reached up with 2 fingers and turned his hearing aid louder. He practiced estate law for 62 years before he retired. He did not ask for a file. "Mrs. Rennick came to me in 1989, he said. She came on a Tuesday because Tuesday was her short shift. He said she paid the consultation fee in cash and would not let him waive it. He said she called him Mr. Barrow for 16 years and never once called him Ellis. Then he told me the part I had never known. You gave her those shares in '87, and you thought she would sell them and rest, he said. She never sold one. She bought more every month for 18 years. Kestrel went public in 1987. I gave Opal a block of founder shares that year, and I did not make a ceremony out of it. I assumed she would sell them, put in a furnace, fix the gutter, maybe see the ocean once. She kept cleaning offices at night on the 18th floor of the Bellamy building until the year she died. She never mentioned the shares to me again, and I was busy, and I let the subject close. Barrow said she used a broker on Vine Street, a man with 1 window and 1 desk. She went in at the end of every month with whatever was left over, and he said some months there was more left over than you would think a person could manage. $29,400 of her own money, he said, and what you gave her is most of it, and together it is 4% of your company, $376 million. I asked him to say the number again. He said it again. The founder block was the larger part. What she bought with grocery money roughly doubled it. Miles later brought me a shoebox from Barrow's storage with the broker receipts in it, and a small spiral notebook in her handwriting, dates on the left and amounts on the right. $11, $40, $62. I have a pay stub of hers in a frame for $211.40, and I had looked at that stub for 19 years and never once understood what I was looking at. She did not leave it to you, Barrow said. She left it to the boy, and she made me write a clause I argued with her about for 2 hours. Arthur was 3 years old in 1989. She put the whole holding into the Rennick Legacy Trust and named him and the shares vest when he turns 40, which happens in November of 2025. What clause, I said, that if anyone ever had him declared incapacitated, the shares do not go to whoever is holding him, they come home, he said. And she said she had cleaned enough offices to know what people do to each other over money. That is the reversion provision. In plain terms, if a court ever declared Arthur legally incapacitated, no conservatorship could touch those shares. They would not pass to the person holding him. They would snap back into the trust the same day out of reach. Barrow said he told her it was unusual, and she let him talk for 2 hours and then said, "Write it." He said she had emptied the wastebaskets of wealthy families on the 18th floor for 31 years. She had heard the telephone calls that happen after 10 at night. She had picked up the paper they tore in half and dropped on the carpet. She told me she was not going to leave a 3-year-old boy standing in front of those people with no door to run through, he said. I thanked him. I went out to the parking lot and sat in the Silverado. Her tin of butterscotch candies was in the glove box, where it has been since 2005. I held it on my knee, and I did not go back inside for a while. That evening, 2 things happened. Tessa Brighthead of Corporate Intelligence, 19 years in corporate investigations, put the Ashby file on the table and gave it to me in 8 sentences. Ashby was not bought. Ashby pitched. Vanessa was the 4th wealthy family. 2 people from the 3 earlier families are still under conservatorships today because none of those families had a 78% owner and a corporate intelligence unit. The second thing was Miles. He walked the completed criminal referral into Internal Revenue Service criminal investigation that afternoon, a formal package handing the financial evidence to federal criminal agents instead of auditors, and got a receipt for it in pencil. He told me it was the 3rd package he had walked into that office since April, and that agents had been working the offshore accounts quietly for 11 weeks before I ever knew their names. So here is what I learned on day 79. A night cleaning woman beat the whole thing 35 years before it started. The woman running it never knew because she had called the house on Corliss Street a chicken coop. Miles asked me what I wanted to do with it. I told him nothing at all. I told him to let her keep signing things. 9 days later, she signed the one thing I had been waiting almost 3 months for her to sign. And Tessa Bright called me at 3 to read me the timestamp. It was day 88, Wednesday, the 10th of July, 2024. I was standing in a hallway on the 22nd floor of Kestrel Tower with a plastic grocery bag in one hand. Tessa Bright is our head of corporate intelligence, and she has been in corporate investigations for 19 years. 2:11 in the afternoon, she said. The alert went off 9 minutes later. The alert was hers, set on day 31, a quiet watch on the correspondence file for the Meridian patent family. I did not see that document move, and I could not have. What reached me was her monitoring record and a certified copy of the filing. An assignment of the Meridian patent family had been transmitted electronically to the United States Patent and Trademark Office. It carried my son's signature, and my son had not signed it. Miles Quinlan came down 2 floors. He has been general counsel here for 34 years and reads everything twice before saying one word about it. He read the filing twice, then put it face down on the table and told me the only thing that mattered. "That was wire fraud, Mr. Rennick," he said. "It was a family problem this morning, and it is a federal case now. Wire fraud is a federal crime that is finished the second a false document crosses a wire. The instant it traveled, the offense was complete. At 2:11 in the afternoon, somebody else's keyboard turned my family trouble into a case for federal agents. I asked why she had moved early, because the packet was dressed up as an internal licensing restructure, and she did not have to file until day 103. Tessa answered in her flat way. The executive physical, the independent laboratory, and Miles Quinlan back at my side of the building after 12 years. She believed her signing window was closing, so she stopped waiting and used a forged name instead. Then Miles told me what he had done back in April in the first week before I had a single piece of paper worth anything. "You did not change the patent papers," I said. "I never touched them," he said. "I changed her envelope. 11 pages instead of 3, and her office initialed it in under 4 hours. The cream envelope with the plum wax seal had reached me on day 0 with a check for $50,000 and 3 sheets folded in 4. Those are the 3 sheets you heard about at the start of all this. On day 9, Miles sent back 11 pages instead, and an assistant initialed every one of them and returned the packet the same afternoon. Nobody read it. It was a letter from a man they had decided was nobody. 3 of those pages did work. Clause 7A put the $50,000 in writing as payment for staying away from a grown man and a small child, and her side signed that. Set beside her email from day 4, it is a written record of buying silence and threatening a court order to get it. Clause 11 put every dispute under the agreement in federal court, which is exactly where I needed to be standing. And Clause 4B was the one Miles had told me to read twice. Clause 4B does one narrow thing. It strips her of any claim that I breached confidentiality by disclosing household medical or financial records in a forum where she has made claims about family welfare. Clause 4B does not give you the right to publish anything, Miles said. It only means she cannot sue you for it afterward. The court record is what makes it usable. I never had permission to publish my son's medical records because that permission was never hers to hand me. What made the toxicology usable is that on day 94, it was filed as an exhibit to our application and became part of the record of a federal court. Day 94 was Tuesday, the 16th of July. I sat in a corridor of the federal courthouse in Harrogate, on a wooden bench across from a vending machine, and ate nothing. A federal judge signed a temporary restraining order freezing $240 million. The application was never mine. Miles filed it in the company's name because Kestrel had the standing that I did not have as a father, and that is the only reason a judge read a single page of it. Miles came out with it, sat down beside me, and read one sentence from it twice. "A written finding of probable fraud concerning Kestrel assets," he said. Then again, slower. "A written finding of probable fraud concerning Kestrel assets." The trustee of the Rennick Voting Trust was served under seal that same afternoon and bound to confidentiality. Clause 9 fired. 78% of the voting power came back to a 71-year-old man in a gray work jacket with shiny elbows, and nobody outside that sealed record knew it. The order stayed sealed until 6 in the evening on day 96. That evening, I briefed Sterling Rook for 2 hours. He is chairman of the board and chair of the audit committee, 41 years on that board, and he is deaf in the right ear, so I sat on his left and went slowly. He had held pieces of it, never all of it at once. "Are you really going to do this in front of 2,000 people, Walt?" he said. "The room does not matter to me," I said. "Arthur is going to hear it from me and not from a lawyer in a hallway." That night, I went home to Sable Row, got down on the floor, and pulled a cedar box out from under my bed. Inside it was the black suit I bought in 2005 for my mother's funeral, worn exactly once in 19 years. I laid it on this bed and looked at it for a long time. Then I shut the door and went to make coffee, and I did not touch it again until Thursday. On Thursday, I put it on, and I drove myself to the convention center, and I parked the truck where anybody could see it. Day 96, Thursday the 18th of July, 2024, 8 o'clock in the evening. The black suit fit the way a 19-year-old suit fits. I left the work jacket at home. I wanted my son to see that I had dressed for something. Emberley Dome Hall at the Harrogate Convention Center moves 2,000 people under a ceiling shaped like half an egg. The annual Bio-Innovation Conference filled every seat that night. Kestrel Biosciences Group was title sponsor, which meant Kestrel paid for the room, the food, and the stage, and Kestrel programmed the award segment. That last part is the only reason any of what follows was possible. The crew running the screens took their instructions from the sponsor, and since Tuesday afternoon, the sponsor was me. I stood in a service aisle on the left side, 40 feet from the stage steps. 3 sheets folded in 4 sat in my inside pocket. Near the front, there was a table with 12 champagne glasses poured and set out for a group that never arrived, and nobody had touched one of them all evening. Grady and Delphine Marchetti sat at that front table. Grady had a golf story going for the men on both sides of him. In the last row on the aisle, Josie Pell sat with a green-covered notebook closed in her lap. She has been Arthur's executive assistant for 4 years. I had asked her to be there, and she came on her own time and never asked me why. Miles Quinlan, our general counsel for 34 years, stood against the back wall with his hands folded. Sterling Rook sat down front with his good ear turned toward the stage. At 8:16, they gave Vanessa Marchetti Rennick the Humanitarian Leader of the Year award. She is president of the Kestrel Foundation and Chief Brand and Social Impact Officer, 5 years with the company. She came up the steps without hurrying, and she spoke slowly and very clearly, the way she always did, and she turned the platinum ring on her index finger while she talked about family legacy. She said the foundation was a family before it was a budget. Then she used me. "My husband's father still drives the same truck he has driven for 20 years, she said, "and I think that is beautiful." 2,000 people laughed. It was a warm laugh. She did not know I was standing 40 feet from her elbow in a black suit. She went on and announced a new biotechnology initiative and a licensing partnership, and the room gave her that too. I had held 78% of the voting power of that company for 48 hours by then, and not one person in a room of 2,000 knew it, including the woman who had just used me as a punchline. That is the part I still think about. Not the money. The laugh. I started walking toward the steps. 2 security men in dinner jackets came down the aisle and met me, and the older one put a hand near my elbow, and he was polite about it. "Sir, I need you to come with me quietly," he said. "I will," I said. "I just need 4 more minutes." Sterling Rook stood up at the front table. He is chairman of the board and chair of the audit committee, 41 years on that board, 74 years old, and he does not raise his voice for anything. "That man owns this company," he said. "Sit down." The hand came off my arm. Then the screens changed. Screen 1 was a chart. 9 long-standing vendors at the top, real ones, every payment under the approval threshold. Then Calderon Holdings Limited in the British Virgin Islands. Then Sable Point Nominees in Nevis. Then Thervance Consulting in Cyprus. Then one last arrow out to 2 retired people living in Bell Harbor. $31 million over 14 months. At the bottom in smaller print, the museum evening in April at $1,600,000 for one night. Screen 2 was the temporary restraining order freezing. $240 million unsealed. 2 hours and 52 minutes before that moment. One sentence was blown up large enough to read from the back row. A written finding of probable fraud concerning Kestrel assets. Screen 3 was a lightbox image with 14 bands on it. "That is not my slide," Vanessa said into the microphone. I came up the steps and stood at the lectern beside the award. "That is not my slide," I said. "No, it is mine." She stayed where she was. "Sit down, Vanessa," I said. "You are not the one giving the speech tonight." I turned to the room. "My name is Walter Rennick. I started this company, and I have spent 43 years in this business, and most of you know me as Chairman Emeritus, the old man who sits in the corner at board meetings and does not vote. As of Tuesday afternoon, I hold 78% of the voting shares of the company sponsoring this evening. Clause 9 of the Rennick Voting Trust returned that vote to me. What is on the second screen is why. There is a conservatorship petition pending in county court against your chief executive officer, and there is a wire fraud referral with a federal number on it, and both of them were built on the same file. Then I stopped talking to the room. I found my son in the 4th row, and I said the sentence I had been carrying for 29 days. Whatever you have been feeling for 14 months, since somebody did that to you. It was not age, and it was not weakness. Arthur stood up on his own legs. 16 years he has given that company, and he walked the whole center aisle without touching a single seat back. "Dad," he said, "what is on that screen?" He came up the steps, past his wife, and he did not look at her. "He is not well," Vanessa said into a live microphone. "He has not been well for 2 years, and every doctor we have put in front of him says so." Behind me, somebody turned this microphone off. In front of me, 3 sets of doors opened at the same time. 9 people came through those 3 doors, and none of them were in a hurry. And I want to be clear that I had not known they were coming that night. It was day 96, Thursday the 18th of July, 2024, 8:52 in the evening. A federal grand jury had returned a sealed indictment 2 days earlier, and it was unsealed at 6 o'clock that evening. Emberley Dome Hall was the only room in the state where all 5 of them were sitting inside the same 4 walls. So that is where the government came. 2,000 people stood up at once. Nobody screamed. The 9 identified themselves out loud, some from Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation, and some from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and they said their names twice for the people in the back. I have been in business 43 years, and I had never heard a room that size go that quiet. They took Vanessa first, at the edge of the stage, 6 feet from the podium. She was turning the platinum ring on her index finger around and around the way she did in every meeting I ever sat in with her. She spoke very slowly and very clearly, the way she always spoke, and she said one thing. "My attorney will be at the office by 9. Then an agent read the federal charges into a live room. Wire fraud. Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, which is the crime of 2 or more people agreeing to do it together. Obstruction of justice. For Grady and Delphine, there was also money laundering, which is the work of running dirty money through clean accounts until it looks earned. Then a state investigator standing behind them read 2 more counts that belonged to the state and not to the government. Dependent adult abuse, which is the offense of harming or exploiting an adult who cannot protect himself and the adult in that count, was my son. Extortion, which means getting money or an agreement out of a person by threatening him with harm. Miles Quinlan came up the steps with a pencil in his shirt pocket and 2 pages in his hand. 34 years he has been general counsel of that company, and he reads everything twice before he says one word of it. He had already read these twice. He read the first page to the room. If he refuses, Dr. Ashby will document him as a risk to the child, and we will go to a court. That was written on day 4. It came out of her own sent folder, and it was addressed to her mother. Then Miles read the second page beside it. Clause 7A out of the 3 pages that came inside the cream envelope with the plum wax seal. In plain words, Clause 7A said that $50,000 was being paid to me in exchange for staying away from a man and a child. Her office initialed it on the 9th of April. I opened the oxblood folder and took the rubber band off and held the check up over my head so the cameras at the back could see it. This check was never cashed, I said, and it is going into a file exactly the way she sent it to me. Grady was at the front table. He had his hand around the stem of a wine glass, and he did not let go of it until an agent asked him to. 31 years that man sold commercial real estate, and in 9 years he never once called me Walter. He called me Chief. He did not call me Chief that night. He did not say anything at all. Delphine stood up before anyone reached her, and the emerald necklace caught the stage light, and she told the agent nearest to her that he had the wrong name. "You have the wrong name," she said. "May I take my coat?" Somebody backing away from that table knocked over one of the 12 untouched champagne glasses on the table reserved for a group that never arrived. It went over on its side and rolled a few inches and stopped against a folded card. Nobody picked it up. It was still lying there an hour later when they turned the house lights all the way up. Then a young woman came up out of the last row. "Josie Pell has been my son's executive assistant for 4 years, and she is the smallest person in this whole story, and she is the one who ended it." She walked the length of that aisle with the green-covered notebook held out in front of her, and she handed it to an agent with both hands, flat the same way a woman in a museum once handed me a cream envelope. 191 entries, she said, and I can tell you the day it started. She wrote the first one down on the 19th of April, 2023. Miles put his 2 pages back in order and said one more thing quietly to me and to the 4 people standing near me. He said it was dead 35 years before she thought of it. He said the thing she spent 14 months building had already been finished off in 1989, in one paragraph by a woman who cleaned offices at night, and that it was gone before Arthur was ever old enough to read it. I did not repeat it. I did not explain it to anybody in that hall. Arthur was standing at my left shoulder. 16 years at that company, and he had his hand flat on the podium to keep it steady, and he was not looking at the doors. He was looking at me. "Dad," he said, "I have only seen you in that suit once." "I bought this suit for my mother's funeral," I said, "and this is the 2nd time I have worn it." The next morning, I read 2 reports. One was the resignation letter Dr. Leland Frost sent to the Ashby Behavioral Institute Clinical Review Panel. The other was Dr. Corinne Ashby's own statement, 3 paragraphs calling my son a case. At 10:30, we came out of a service corridor into the concrete parking structure, and my truck was on the 2nd level with the primer patch on the driver door. Arthur got in the passenger seat of a 2004 pickup for the first time in 6 years. He waited until I had the key in. "How long did you know before you told me?" he said. I told him the truth, and the truth took us most of the way home, and then he asked me the question I had been afraid of since June. I answered him on the ramp out of that parking structure, and the answer was 29 days, and it cost me more to say than anything else in this story. Day 103 came 7 days after that, Thursday, the 25th of July, 2024, in the Harrogate County Courthouse. The conservatorship petition was fourth on the morning list. Miles Quinlan sat beside my son with a pencil and a legal pad, 34 years as general counsel of that company, and he read the file twice before the judge came in. Dr. Naomi Fry was in the second row with her gloves on. 22 years as an independent forensic toxicologist, and her report was already in the record, and nobody in that room was going to argue with it. The judge read for about 3 minutes. Then he looked up. "The petition is vacated," he said. "We are adjourned." I checked my flip phone in the hallway. 4 minutes. Out on the sidewalk, I said it out loud, and Miles wrote it down in pencil. The biggest thing in my life ended faster than a parking dispute. Getting Arthur off those 3 compounds was not clean. There were weeks that summer when he could not hold a paragraph in his head. His right hand still shook when he poured water. Dr. Fry came to the house twice, and she never told me what I wanted to hear. "Some of it comes back in weeks," she said. "Some of it in months. And some of it I am still not going to promise you." Poppy was in his custody by then. She was 4 years old, and she carried that plastic deer with the one broken leg everywhere, and she never asked anybody to fix it. She called me Pop, and after more than a year of being kept away, I got to hear it again. Day 137 was Wednesday, the 28th of August. 41 days off the drugs. We were at 41 Corliss Street, and Arthur was washing a plate at Opal's sink because he wanted to do something with his hands. There is a radio on that windowsill, and it has been there since before he was born. A song came on, and he stopped. He set the plate down and sat on the floor with his back against the cabinet. "Grandma used to sing that when she did the dishes," he said. I could not get to that, Dad. For more than a year, I could not get to that. I did not say anything for a while. Then he asked me the question he had been carrying since the museum. "Why did nobody ever tell me what you owned?" he said. So I told him the truth about myself. Opal died in 2005 believing that money turns people into liars. I built my life around hiding it. No Rennick was going to be loved for money or looked down on for the lack of it, and I was proud of that rule, and I was wrong. "Because I wanted you loved for nothing," I said. "And I lied about it for 12 years out of love, and you paid the interest on it." A woman looked at my son and saw a cheap target with a father who was nobody. That is what my rule bought him. He did not answer me for a long time. "That is not the same as forgiving you," he said. "I know it is not," I said. Autumn took the rest of it. In September, the government filed a superseding indictment and added a racketeering count, which is the charge used when people run an enterprise as an ongoing criminal operation, instead of committing one crime and stopping. Wire fraud conspiracy and money laundering were already in there, and the state case over what was done to my son ran alongside it on its own docket. Seizure is the part people never picture, and forfeiture is the part that comes later. I saw paper inventory tags on the furniture at Ardenmore Crest tags on a dining table that seated 18. The 94-foot boat was towed off its slip at Cabrillo Key in October under a federal seizure warrant, and none of it became the government's for good until after the sentences. The Silver Pine Hollow property went at auction for $8,500,000, and $19 million in back taxes was assessed against Grady and Delphine Marchetti. Grady sold commercial real estate for 31 years, and he called me chief for 5 of them. He and Delphine moved into a 4th-floor walk-up at Dunmore Flats. There is no elevator in that building, and I take no pleasure in saying so. Arthur went back to that estate exactly once. He walked past all of it and took one object off a shelf, a framed pay stub for $211.40, and he carried it out of the house himself. Day 284 was Wednesday, the 22nd of January, 2025, the federal courthouse in Harrogate. Josie Pell testified for 90 minutes about a green-covered notebook. She had been Arthur's executive assistant for 4 years, and she had written down every meeting she was ever asked to keep off a calendar, and she never raised her voice. The verdicts came back on the 4th of February. Sentencing was set 5 months out the way it always is because the court orders a report on every defendant before it decides anything. On the 11th of June 2025, the sentences came down. Vanessa, 22 years at Red Hawk Ridge Federal Correctional. Grady, 9 years. Delphine, 7 years. Dr. Corinne Ashby, 6 years. Dr. Leland Frost, 4 years. On the steps afterward, Miles told Arthur to sit down and put a telephone in his hand. Ellis Barrow is 91. He practiced estate law for 62 years, and he is the only living person who watched Opal sign in 1989. Your grandmother argued with me for 2 hours in 1989, Mr. Rennick, he said, and she was right, and I was wrong. Then he told my son about the Opal Rennick Legacy Trust and the reversion provision inside it. A woman who cleaned offices at night hired a lawyer and spent 2 hours arguing with him so that if anyone ever tried to do exactly what was done to her grandson, there would be a door. Arthur asked him one question. He asked what happens in November. Mr. Barrow told him to be patient, because it was not November yet. It is November now. My son turned 40 last Friday, and this morning I mowed my mother's grass for the last time this year. Saturday, the 15th of November, 2025, 8 in the morning with the sun still low. 41 Corliss Street is a one-story brick house with a gutter I replaced 19 months ago. I put the mower in the garage and hung the key on the nail. My truck sat in the driveway where it always does with the primer patch on the driver door. Arthur came at 9 with Poppy. He is 40 and he has been Chief Executive Officer of Kestrel Biosciences Group again since March. He carried 2 paper cups of coffee across the lawn and did not spill either one. I watched his right hand the whole way. It was steady. Poppy is 5. She went straight to the porch steps with her plastic deer, the one with the broken leg, and set it on the top step facing the street. Josie Pell came up the walk behind them, chief of staff now, and the notebook in her hand was not green anymore. Miles Quinlan came last, 35 years, as general counsel now, with a pencil in his shirt pocket, and nothing else. He read one page twice at my mother's kitchen table and said the 4% vested on Monday. That was the Opal Rennick Legacy Trust, doing exactly what it was written in 1989 to do. My son reached 40, the shares came to him, and the reversion provision that saved them never had to be used again. Vanessa is serving 22 years. Arthur waited until Miles went out to the porch. Then he said, "It vested on Monday, $376 million, and I already know what I am doing with it." "You do not have to tell me," I said. "It is going to night shift workers, Dad," he said, "and it is going to have her name on it. Cleaners, orderlies, security guards. The people inside a building when the lights are off." He decided it without asking me or the board. The first grant is being written by Josie Pell because she noticed something when nobody paid her to notice anything. Understand what that money was. Founder shares I gave away in 1987 and $29,400 saved out of a paycheck of $211.40 a week. A cleaning woman hired an attorney with her own money, and $376 million grew out of it. She never saw $1. I took the gray scarf out of the closet. Hand knit with one dropped stitch near the end, a small hole you can put a finger through. I wrapped it twice around Poppy's neck and showed her the hole. "Do not fix the stitch, Pop," I said. "I like the hole." "Then we will leave it," she said, and pulled the end up over her chin. Then I glued the deer's broken leg at the workbench and clamped it, and when the clamp came off, the leg had dried crooked. Poppy turned it over twice in both hands. "It is better crooked," she said. I brought the oxblood folder in from the truck. The $50,000 check was still in it, uncashed and soft at the folds. I opened the frame that holds my mother's pay stub and laid the check behind it face down. 1 week of a cleaning woman's wages in front $50,000 of quiet money behind, and I hung the frame on her kitchen wall. Now the tin. My mother kept butterscotch in her cleaning cart for 31 years. She worked nights and came home at 5 in the morning while I was asleep, so she left one on the kitchen table so I would know she had been there. I have bought a tin every month since 2005. I set one candy on her table before I turned out the light, and I explained it to nobody. Here is what I learned as a man and not as a founder. I believed that if I made enough money, nobody in my family would ever be looked down on. A woman in a very good coat looked down on me anyway, and it did not matter. What saved my son was not 78% of anything. It was a paragraph a cleaning woman insisted on in 1989, and one notebook kept by a young woman afraid of being blamed. We sat on the porch until dark. The deer sat on the top step with its crooked leg, and Poppy leaned into the scarf and fell asleep against my arm. I turned my keyring over, and the cracked plastic badge came up in my palm the way it always does. My mother cleaned offices at night, and she was the richest person any of us ever knew. Here is the lesson plain. I thank God my mother wrote one paragraph in 1989 because a cleaning woman's stubbornness saved what 78% of a company never could. People will call this a family revenge story. It was not. Family revenge does not bring back the nights. My mother worked, and Dad revenge does not unsay the words spoken to me on those museum steps. Some will come searching for revenge and Dad revenge hoping for blood. What they find here is a receipt, a notebook, and a tin of butterscotch. Real Dad revenge, if it exists at all, is a father who simply stays. Do not be like me. I spent 19 years believing that if I earned enough, nobody would ever look down on the people I loved. I was wrong. I let a good son stand alone too long because I thought silence was strength. Do not wait 96 days to speak to your child. Do not measure your worth by the door somebody points you toward. My opinion, for what it is worth, money proves nothing, and paperwork protects more than pride. Kindness signed and dated beats anger shouted, and the people who clean a building at night see more truth than the people sitting in the front row. If this story reached you, leave one line in the comments about someone who worked nights for you. Share it with a person who needs it tonight, and subscribe if you would like to sit with stories like this again. A gentle word, before we part, the stories ahead contain fictional details shaped for reflection and for the lessons inside them. If they are not for you, step away kindly and choose something that serves your heart better. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. This has been Bitter Autumn.